All right, well, thanks for joining me today, Jeff. I really appreciate this chance to talk to you. I was really excited when I saw that you had a motion passed by your municipal council in favor of proportional representation. And I wanted to spend a few minutes just talking to you about why you did that and why it's important to you and how you hope that it makes a difference. So maybe before we get into that, you could just do a little introduction about who you are.
Sure. I'm Jeff Wheeldon. I'm a municipal councillor in Brighton, Ontario. We're a small town of about 13,000 people, largely rural, historic farming community and fishing community on the North Shore of Lake Ontario. Long before I was into municipal politics, I was interested in electoral reform. I ran federally in 2015 and 2019, provincially in 2018. And electoral reform was always one of the things that I was talking about. As a Green Party guy, you get used to the calculus that goes into how does somebody get elected. You hear a lot from people about how they wish they could vote for you, but they have to vote against someone else. And I felt like a large part of my role as a Green Party candidate was doing therapy for people who were frustrated with the way that they vote. And so along those lines, it had become very clear to me early on that unless there was a different way of voting, people would only ever vote in the same ways. And we see that time and again. We only really have two ruling parties in Canada, and one of them goes so far as to call itself the natural ruling party in Canada, which indicates that it's a structural, them getting elected is a structural issue, not necessarily anything to do with the strength of their platform or their character. So, you know, as, I don't know about you, but I really believe that we should be voting for people with strength of character. We should be voting for the best ideas and policies to govern our country. And um, at this point, the way our system works, regardless of the individual character of the people running for office, and regardless of how many good ideas are out there, the outcomes of any election do not hinge on those things at all. And that's a big problem for me. So a little while ago, I was at the AMO conference, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. And that's the biggest municipal conference in Ontario and brings together elected officials and senior staff from municipalities across the province. And the keynote this year was Andrew Coyne. And he got a lot of applause, even standing ovation from people. And he was basically speaking from his new book, which is about the need for serious democratic reform, electoral reform, not least among the many types of democratic reform we need. And he just laid out the current situation in North America and particularly in our democratic system here in Canada. And there was a lot of widespread applause for this. And I thought this might be a good time for an advocacy motion from municipalities. Now, sometimes we do advocacy motions where we make recommendations or suggestions or beg, frankly, for the province or the federal government to make a change that would be in the interest of municipalities. And I thought with this many people standing and clapping for electoral reform, this is a good chance for me to get a motion started that would get passed around to all of the municipalities in Ontario and see how many people were willing to jump on board. Now, so far, four other municipalities have endorsed
Hmm.
and passed that resolution at their own council. So there's five of us now out of 444. So it's still small. I think a lot of municipalities don't necessarily pay a ton of attention to advocacy motions because they recognize that advocacy sometimes only goes so far.
Right.
And there are a lot of different advocacy motions floating around. One that I've seen from quite a few municipalities lately is the AMO motion to elect respect, which is a call for a different kind of democratic reform where we ask all municipal councillors or council candidates to just be decent human beings. And I think that's
You'd
a
think you
good
wouldn't
place to
need a
start
motion
too.
for that, right? It's too bad we
You'd
need a
think
motion
so.
for that.
You'd think so. But I mean, the incentives that are currently in play are that people who want to, if people are considering whether or not to run for council at a
Yeah.
municipal level, municipal politics are mostly in the background for most people. We pay most attention to federal and provincial, and yet they're so far off from our daily lives. And so people who engage in local politics tend to be traditionally motivated by, we are just stewards of our community. We want to make sure that the purse strings are kept tight and that the roads are kept paved. And so there's a lot of sort of embedded conservatism in municipal politics. But there's increasingly people are choosing to run at the municipal level because uh, they stand against the establishment, and it's much easier to do so at a level you can actually get
Mm,
elected at in municipal politics than it is in federal provincial. So a lot of people are drawn to municipal politics because it's easier to get a foothold there. And if you want to, uh, if you have a populist bent, you want to stand up for the people, you want to be anti-establishment, that's really attractive to a lot of people right now. And so what ends up
interesting.
happening is that the people who are involved in municipal politics tend to self-select both the people who are upset at the way things are, um, try and get into that system, and then the people who would otherwise want to be a more moderate voice see how toxic councils are becoming and say, well, I don't want to participate in that. And so they step
Wow.
away. And so we're seeing more and more that it's not just, one rogue agent on a council. Sometimes,
Right.
I'm taking an HR course right now from the Association of Municipal Managers, Clerks, and Treasurers of Ontario, and just trying to understand what my municipal staff go through and understand their roles and
Right.
understand my role in relation to theirs. And so taking this HR course, and they're talking about retention, and every single person in that class is saying, well, we have huge turnover, and it's mostly because our council is so toxic. And they're
Wow.
saying things like, it's not just one or two, it's all nine of them. It's all seven of them. Like, so this is something that's
Wow.
we're seeing at the municipal level, but we recognize that toxic politics filters downward. We're getting the
Yeah,
trickle down effect of toxic federal and provincial politics.
that's
And so,
exactly, Jeff, what I was going to ask you, right? I mean, so yeah, it's not isolated because people who aren't involved in municipal politics tend to think of it as very different, a very different world, but we're seeing this kind of, yeah, adversarial, winner take all, extremist, whatever, just filtering right down. And I mean, sometimes people get their start in federal and provincial politics at the municipal level too.
mhm.
So that's,
Yeah,
yeah,
and I think that what we're seeing now is actually that some people are taking it even further and saying that they want to take their anti-establishment politics to maybe what is the lowest, least visible level, which is school board elections as well. And so
right.
we're seeing movements among some far-right groups to try and make sure that they can get onto school boards. And that's where they're trying to ban books or, get rid
Wow.
of any sort of sex
Wow.
ed or things like that. Stop vaccination programs in schools. Those kinds of things are happening more and more. And it's really because how many people even bother to vote for their school board trustee or know who their trustee is?
Right. Yeah. Um, why should municipalities, if I don't know much about municipal politics, but if I saw your advocacy resolution go by, right, I would be like, why should I care about this as a city councillor? How does the provincial and federal voting system affect the work you do or the work you're trying to do in your city? Like, why should it matter that they take a position and they take a stand?
Absolutely. And I think it does touch back to what we were talking about before in terms of who is choosing to engage in politics and what is the tone of that politics. So people engage in municipal politics when they feel like they can't make a difference at the federal or provincial levels. They feel like politics is broken and the only place where they can really make a difference is locally. And honestly, I agree. That's why I ended up on council. I started out at the federal level and worked my way down to a place where I could actually make a really positive difference. But for somebody who feels like we need to burn it all down and drain the swamp and whatever other things you get from federal and even international politics, uh, those attitudes do trickle down to the municipal level. And so we're in a position now where a lot of councils are really, they're so divided that they can't get anything done. The municipality has constant turnover of staff because the toxicity in the workplace actually, even in some cases, really violates the Employment Standard Act.
Wow.
So if we can't function at a municipal level because politics writ large is so toxic, and if we know that that toxicity is in large part driven by the way that we run electoral campaigns, and those campaigns are shaped around an electoral system that
Yeah.
really prioritizes divisiveness, then from my perspective, it's as simple as you need to fix the system so that we can bring the tone back to a positive, collaborative
Right.
approach.
Wow. And you've really seen a change in, say, the last 4 or 5 years, because I know that I've seen a change in the kind of politics and the amount of, yeah, anger out there and just abuse that wouldn't have been acceptable in the past.
Absolutely, yeah. In 2022, Brighton, in the election, a week before the election, the municipality of Brighton got a report from consultants. KPMG came in and did a workplace culture analysis of the municipality and said, we're a toxic workplace. And it cited in this report several times councillors bullying, councillors harassing.
Wow.
And so the mayor at this public meeting a week before the election says, I understand that you haven't noted any names in here, but it seems relevant to the election. Are you able to tell us who these councillors are? And they would not.
Right.
And those who knew. It was, if
Yeah.
you were following closely, it was clear. But because that was the way that we ended up starting our term in the aftermath of that report, we made a big effort from the get-go in Brighton to treat our staff really well and to change the tone of our politics.
Yeah.
And we have by far the most functional council around, without
Wow.
question. And I'm so pleased to be part of that. And it didn't take that much effort, honestly, but I'm already getting calls and emails and text messages about what's going to happen in the next election, who's going to be running. People are already
Right.
speculating. People are already talking about things in kind of populist ways. In our last election, we actually had an American style attack ad produced against a mayoral candidate in a tiny little town like ours.
Wow. Wow.
People were getting sued over it. It was so incredibly toxic. And that style of politics is not functional. It's not helpful. It's not kind. It doesn't embody any of our values or ideals, and it doesn't lead to any good policy. So the more we can change this system into something that is going to functionally just encourage more people to run, encourage people who want to be proactive and productive and
Yeah.
collaborative to run, the better.
Jeff, how hard was it to get your fellow counselors on board with endorsing this motion? I'm really curious.
Not at all. It was unanimous. It was very easy to get my
Wow.
fellow counselors on board.
Well, that's really interesting, right? Because, like you said, you probably come from different political backgrounds and perspectives, but you could all get around endorsing this motion.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't want to suggest that everyone is going to be signing petitions as well or things like that. With advocacy motions, there is a certain sense of, well, they're probably not going to listen to us anyway, so we might as well support it. But the tone in the room when we talk about wanting a better quality of politics, I mean that's
Yeah.
something that we as a council in Brighton have been dealing with all term, and we've been succeeding at it. So I think it was very easy for our council to do it, and I think that there are a lot of councils across the province, whether they endorsed our motion or not, who are dealing with the challenges of this. And I don't know if you've heard about there's a group called Women of Ontario Say No, and that group came up out of the many sexual harassment allegations against an Ottawa councillor, Rick Chiarelli. Um, and basically, what happens right now is that when politicians behave badly, the worst we can do is dock their pay.
Right.
And the way the system works is that if someone makes an integrity commissioner complaint against a member of council, and the integrity commissioner does an investigation and finds out, yes, this was true, this person violated the code of conduct, council then has to make a unanimous uh, vote to cause any consequences whatsoever. And the most we can do is dock pay up to 450 days. So there's virtually no consequences for counselors who behave badly. And the incentive for counselors to vote against one of their peers, like nobody, nobody's going to want to vote against one of their own peers.
Right.
And right now, the province is introducing legislation yet again to give us the power to actually kick somebody off council, declare their seat vacant.
Hmm.
But again, it's going to require this unanimous vote, and so I'm betting that it will never be used.
Right.
In my
It's
opinion, it should go to a judge. We shouldn't be, it's funny. Counselors are not allowed to participate in any way in any bylaw enforcement decision because
okay.
we're told we are not a judiciary body. We do not
Right.
want to politicize the judicial process.
Right.
But when it comes to policing ourselves, it requires unanimous vote. So I don't know what they're thinking, but
Yeah,
I'm hope
you're kind of stuck. That's
yeah.
yeah.
I'm hopeful
Okay.
that it will rein things in a little bit. But again, why should we have a punitive process at the bottom when
Yep.
we could change the system at the top?
Right.
Let's create
Exactly.
a scenario where more people want to collaborate and the incentives are against the divisiveness.
Yep.
And then we won't need a punitive process at the end because we'll end up with better people uh, in better situations where they're not pitted against each other.
Yep. All right, Jeff. So you're hoping to get more people obviously telling you they've passed this motion. How can how can people how can Fairvote Canada supporters help? How can they get involved in making
Sure.
this
Well, so when we passed this resolution in Brighton, the
yep,
last part of the resolution is that it be circulated to all of the municipalities in Ontario.
yep,
And so your municipality has seen it. Now, typically with these advocacy motions that get sent all across the province, um, what ends up happening is the clerk will send an email to council saying, for your information, here's a vote somebody else somewhere else passed. Do you want to support this or do you want to put this on our agenda so we can talk about
okay,
it? And sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But all it takes is for one member of council to say, yeah, I would like that on the agenda. And
interesting, okay,
so if Fair Vote Canada members want to have their council talk about it,
yep,
you can just let them know to contact their clerk, municipal
okay,
clerk, and say, I'd really love to see this on an agenda. Can you ask council if they're willing to talk about it? And then reach out to your councillors and say, I've done this. Um, I'd really love to see you talk about electoral reform. I think it'll lead to a better politics here in our town as well.
yep,
Please talk about this and please pass this resolution from the municipality of Brighton.
fantastic. And I guess one of the things that surprised me is just to see it pass at um, a small council that I kind of look at as partially rural area. Do you know what I mean? Like it wasn't like this came from the center of a progressive city.
Yeah.
So do you anticipate that it would be easier to get this talked about or passed at certain councils than other councils? I'm seriously curious.
I think that it's much easier to get things passed in smaller municipalities.
Yep,
Part of the almost alienating aspect of politics at the federal and provincial levels is just the scale. An MP or an MPP that represents 100,000 people is just further removed from everything on the
yep,
ground, right? So when you have, say, Toronto City Council, they've got, I don't even know, 17, 18 councillors with massive districts. They are subject to a lot more of the incentives and pressures and conflicts that happen in federal and provincial politics as well.
yep.
Whereas, one of my fellow councillors lives 5 houses down. Um,
Right.
So being in a small town, it's very easy for us to have a conversation. You run into your residents at the coffee shop or the post office. And so our conversations can be much more simple and straightforward. We're not trying to weigh the politics of, a few million people. We're trying to say what's right and what's wrong and what can we do about it and what are our values. And at a small town level, you can figure that out pretty quick.
Jeff, when these motions are passed, how would the federal or provincial governments know that you've passed this?
Well, the second last part on the resolution is that it be circulated to the federal and provincial governments. And so
Awesome.
when we passed that in Brighton, it immediately went out to everyone that was listed there at the end of the motion. And so they've seen it. At least some clerk somewhere has seen it. They got it in an email. Whether or
Right,
not they did anything with it is beside the point. But if they get 444 of them, it might
right.
make a dent.
It might be something interesting for the local MP and MPP to be made aware of if their municipal council has passed that, just as an indication of, the kind of broad cross-partisan support there is in the community for a better politics and citizens who are engaged enough to be paying attention to this kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes people um, rightly join together into advocacy organizations like Fair Vote Canada because they recognize that there can be strength in numbers and really positive things can come out of organizing. And I sometimes remind people that that's all a municipality is a group of people working together for their common good. And
Yeah.
so if a municipality is advocating for something, that's just an advocacy group that's just in one particular location. That's all.
This has been great, Jeff. Thank you so much for taking the time to explain what you've done, for taking the initiative. I want everybody to know that Fairvote Canada had absolutely nothing to do with this. I was surprised and delighted to get this email from Jeff saying, "Hey, I've done this and I've sent this out to other municipalities, and some are coming back and saying that they've passed this motion too." And, that's a, wonderful example of grassroots action and just making sure this issue is talked about at every level, because you never know when these conversations are going to pay off down the road. So thank you
Well,
so much, Jeff.
I can't say you've had nothing to do with it because your work has been encouraging and inspiring me for the last decade. So thank you for your work.
Thank you for sticking with us and for sticking with a really tough cause, but one that's even more important today than it ever has been. Thank you.
Amen.